Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. The program will begin shortly. Thank you. Please welcome ALEC 2025 National Chair, West Virginia Senator Patricia Rucker.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone's morning was filled with good conversation, practical insights, and as always, good policy discussions. I really hope that everyone has been able to take advantage of all the many things ALEC has to offer. Before we begin, I would like to invite us all to pause and reflect with a moment of prayer. Please welcome Ron McMillan, Nevada State Minister for Capital Commission from the Capital Commission Group.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. Hasn't this been an amazing conference so far? I am not a legislator, but like you, I know and understand the enormous responsibility that is public service, as I have spent a lifetime in public service and leadership as an Army veteran, a career law enforcement officer. Thank you. And now I serve legislators like yourselves in the state of Nevada as a chaplain. So if you would allow me, I know I'm standing between you and lunch, if you would allow me a moment, I would like to make a brief but important point. Whether you know it, your authority as a government leader comes from God. Let me say that again. Your authority as a government leader comes from God. The Bible tells us in Romans 13:1 that there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by him. Furthermore, verse 4 tells us that those in authority are appointed as God's minister to you for good. Think about that for a moment. You have been entrusted with authority by the one who created you, God. Not for personal gain, but for the good of others, for the sake of justice and the flourishing of society. And with that trust comes accountability, not just to your voters or to your colleagues, but ultimately to God, the very one who gave you that authority. Having worked closely with legislators, I recognize that most of you already feel the tremendous weight of your responsibility. It is not my intent to add any burden that you may already feel, but I believe it is important for us to understand precisely where our authority comes from and who we are called to serve. You have been called for a great purpose, and I want to thank you for answering that call. Not many are willing to sacrifice as much of themselves to serve the good of others. But please know that we at Capital Commission and so many other believers across the country love you, we appreciate you, and we are praying for you daily. Can we go before the Lord right now? Let's pray before lunch. Heavenly Father, we come before you, the source of all authority, justice, and truth. I thank you for these public servants, men and women, who have chosen the path of leadership and accepted the weight of governance. Lord, your word tells us that all authority is from you, and that those who govern do so as your servants. Would you remind these leaders today that their positions are sacred trust? Their decisions matter, not only to their constituents, but to you. They will one day give account, not just for the decisions they've made, but for how they've served. Would you grant them wisdom, Lord, not the wisdom of the world, but wisdom from above. Give them the courage to stand for what is right, even when it is costly. Give them clarity when the path forward is clouded by pressure, politics, or public opinion. Protect their families, Lord. Guard their hearts and surround them with people who speak truth in love. When they are weary, renew their strength. When they are uncertain, anchor them in your word. Help them to govern not out of fear or ambition, but from a desire to serve you and those made in your image. Let their legacy be one of faithfulness, justice, and humility. Bless their service, Lord. Guide their every decision and remind them daily that they ultimately serve you. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord, we thank you for the food that we're about to receive, and we ask that you would bless it to our bodies. Use it to strengthen and nourish us. It is in the name of the mighty Son, Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ron. That was a really important reminder. At ALEC, we talk often about the 50 laboratories of democracy. That's not just rhetoric, it's how we operate. State leaders, not federal agencies, are the engine of good governance. And our model policies, task forces, and academies give you the tools to make that engine run smoother and stronger. But as any good policymaker knows, nothing in government or in life runs without a strong economy. Today, we have someone who has an incredible understanding of what it takes to create a strong economy. A man who has spent his entire career fighting for fiscal responsibility, economic liberty, and smarter government. Stephen Moore is the co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, co-founder of Rich States, Poor States, and a longtime ally to ALEC. Earlier this year, Steve led a national coalition, the Tax Cut Victory Alliance, to help pass what we proudly call the One Big Beautiful Bill. ALEC was a proud member of that effort. When the campaign began, around 400 ALEC members had signed a letter urging Congress to act. By the time President Trump signed the bill into law on the 4th of July, that number had grown to more than 630. We're proud of the role that ALEC plays and is grateful to every single member who added their name to that letter. Your voice helped make history. Stephen Moore has advised presidents, testified before Congress, and appears regularly on radio and TV as a trusted voice on free markets. I'm going to give you all a chance to stop your conversations, so I'm not competing with you. I know we have a great time talking and networking here, but if you all don't mind, most importantly, Stephen Moore is someone who believes deeply in the role of the states, knowing that America is strongest when the states take the lead. Please join me in welcoming our good friend, Steve Moore.
Well, hello, everybody. It is a great privilege to be with you all again. This is amazing. I don't think I've ever spoken to a larger group of people. Lisa, this is an incredible testament to your, isn't this the greatest leader of ALEC that we've ever had? So thank you for everything you do, Lisa. I'm proud to be a member of the board of ALEC, but this is one of my proudest moments. I mean, my God. I got, you know, Arthur Laffer is my warm-up act. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. And Arthur proves, by the way, that good things do come in small packages. I can say that because he's not here. He was the best man at my wedding, by the way, so I can rib him. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a quick economic lesson for 10, 15 minutes, and there'll be a test, an exam after this, so please pay close attention. I'm going to start with what Pat was talking about a bit, about this big, beautiful bill. This is, I've been in Washington since the early 1980s, so that's a long period of time, 40 years. I've been in the swamp, and I would have to say that this is one of the greatest conservative triumphs in at least 3 decades in Washington. This is a very, very good bill. And there's so much in this bill. I mean, you all know that this is a tax cut. We made the Trump tax cuts permanent, which is hugely important. But there's so much in this bill that you probably aren't aware of because we haven't talked a lot about this. But a lot of these things, Lisa, are things that we've worked on at ALEC, and what I call the hidden gems in the big, beautiful bill. Let me just mention a few of these. One of the projects that ALEC has been critical on, and that we're making huge, huge gains on, of course, is school choice. This bill that Donald Trump just signed into law is the biggest federal expansion of school choice ever in American history, which is an incredible accomplishment. So thank you, Donald Trump. Second of all, another issue that we work on here at ALEC and that you're working on in your states is how to restrain health care costs. It's one of the biggest fiscal economic issues and for virtually every state and Washington and American families. This bill is the single biggest expansion of health savings accounts ever. So that's a huge thing. How about the fact that, remember under Joe Biden, they tried to impose an electric vehicle mandate on Americans that was going to require Americans all over the country to buy an electric vehicle. We eliminated the electric vehicle mandate in this bill. You can buy whatever car you want to. This is America. We got rid of the Green New Deal in this bill. So that's gone, folks. The Green New Deal is dead. I'm trying to remember some of the other things that we did in this bill that were, another issue we worked on, Lisa, is work requirements for welfare. This bill dramatically increases work requirements. We're not going to let people go hungry in this country. We're not going to let them go homeless. We're not going to let them suffer deprivation. But if you are getting a handout for taxpayers, you have to either be in a job or looking for a job if you're able-bodied, period. And that's very popular with Americans. And incidentally, when we did welfare reform, when Newt Gingrich was Speaker, that was one of the most important pieces of social legislation we ever passed in the 1990s. Every study shows, even the Brookings Institute, which is a liberal think tank in Washington, that we reduced the child and overall poverty rate in the United States after welfare reform by 70%, because the only way out of welfare is a job. So that's an enormous thing too. And of course we did no tax on tips, did no tax on overtime. I could go on, but these are enormous benefits. So now let me kind of show you some charts if I can. that will document kind of what I'm talking about here. You can go to the next chart, please. I'm going to skip that one. Well, hold on, just on that, go back to that one for just. One of the things that we need to appreciate is over the last 40 years, since the age of Reagan, we have, what you're looking at is a stock market, adjusted for inflation and on a logarithmic scale. That's the green line. What you're looking there is one of the greatest period of wealth creations in the history of civilization. No nation ever has ever seen what we've seen in the United States in terms of the expansion of our economy. The Dow Jones, if you go back to the early 1980s, was at 1,000. Today it's at 45,000. If the Dow Jones does as well over the next 40 years as it did over the last 40 years, we're talking about Dow 1.5 million 40 years from now. So my point is, when we get the economic policies right, as we did under Reagan and as we have done under Trump, really good things come for the economy. I'm super bullish right now, by the way, on the U.S. economy. Now that we've gotten this bill through, I think it's going to be an enormous stimulus. So the next chart I'm going to show you is just that Trump has been really good for stocks. And this was just what happened in his first term. In his second term, despite some of the tariff talks, and I'm with Arthur Laffer, I'm not a big tariff guy, but now that we've got these Trump trade deals done, that's a good story. Inflation, the single reason, biggest reason that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lost the election was because of runaway inflation. There's no question about that. Americans hate inflation. They despise it, especially my wife. Every night I come home and, you have no idea what things cost in the grocery store. Look at the inflation rate. Go back to that previous one. Look at the inflation rate. The red bars are the inflation rate in Trump's first term. The blue bars are the rates of inflation under Trump. By the way, how many of you, when I used to go on TV during Biden's, I'd say, oh, the inflation rate, official rate, prices are up 21% under Biden. How many of you think the real inflation rate was a lot higher than that? I mean, almost everybody's hand is raised, because when you look at the things that Americans have to buy, when you're talking about your groceries, your gas bills, your utilities, your tuition payments, and so on, those were up 35 to 40%, and that was an enormous strain on American families. The next chart, if you will. This is something many of you have seen before, but I want to stress it, that when you look, the magic of the free enterprise system is that over time prices fall. As we have more productivity and companies find ways to reduce prices to become more efficient and productive. And what's so interesting about this chart is look at those two, look at the top, at the very top of the chart, and look at the things that are rising in price. College tuition, medical services, and child care services. What do those all have in common? Government, right? These are the industries that are run by government. When I ask my liberal friends, gee, why do we have the government play such a huge role in education and healthcare? They always say, to make it more affordable. They're doing a great job of it, isn't it? So we have got to get government out of healthcare and education, in my humble opinion. Okay, the next chart, if you will. I'm going to skip that one because I'm running out of time. So this is an important one. Why did we have the runaway inflation under Biden? I think everyone knows in this room why we had the runaway inflation. It's because Biden came in and he spent $4 to $5 trillion on top of the money that Trump had spent on COVID. Oh, and incidentally, let me just say this as an aside. I'm almost like Cato, Cato the elder used to say every speech that he gave, Carthage must be destroyed. So I say this in every single speech. Can we all agree, everyone in this room, especially the lawmakers in this room, can we make a solemn pledge that we will never, 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 never again allow the government to shut down our businesses? Never again should they shut down our schools. Never again should they be able to shut down our hospitals. It was the single greatest abuses of power in American history, and it was an absolute failure. We know, by the way, Lisa, from the red states, that we got the red states to open up, thanks to ALEC and other groups. Red states opened up, the blue states shut down, and guess what? The red states had lower death rates from COVID than the states that shut down. Lockdowns killed people, and we're never going to allow that to happen again. I had to say that because it's so important. By the way, the left is very eager to shut down the climate change, this or that. They're looking for the best opportunity they can to shut down our economy. We're never going to let that happen again. Okay, the next one. This is pretty critical, folks. This is the most important chart in this presentation. We are all deeply, deeply concerned about our national debt. Everyone in this room is. We have to be, because we're now at $37 trillion in our national debt. We're headed to $40 trillion. And you can see from this chart, that red line is the Congressional Budget Office forecast, and it's very, very frightening. We're headed from 120% of our GDP to 180, 200% of GDP in terms of our debt. That would be an absolute apocalyptic future if we allow that to happen. And that's the standard chart you see, and every time you see a forecast on the debt, that's the line you see. However, you know, there's an old saying, garbage in, garbage out. It depends on what assumptions you're making about the future. And so what we did was we looked at what if we get Trump to because look, the Congressional Budget Office is saying the U.S. economy will grow 1.7% per year for the next 30 years. And to that I say, hell no. This is America. We're not going to grow at 1.7%. We're going to do everything we possibly can in public policy to raise that economic growth rate up to 3%. By the way, 3% is not a moonshot, folks. The average growth rate of the U.S. economy in the last 100 years is 3.2%. So we can do this. We can accomplish that. Now, if you put that chart up again, please, because now look if you put 3% in the model rather than 1.7%, look at what happens to the debt. We bend the curve down. Now, I am not saying we shouldn't cut government spending. There is nobody in this room who wants to cut government spending more than I do. And by the way, I have to say something before I forget, Lisa. I don't know if you have heard the news, but guess what? No more PBS, no more congressional, no more the public broadcasting, and no more USAID. We passed the rescission bill. It is done. It is a great, great accomplishment. It's like one of the first times, Lisa, in my lifetime, they've actually gotten rid of a government program. So I really want to salute Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and I think actually John Thune has done an enormously good job. Look, so my point is, when we talk about policy, anything that increases economic growth, whether it's pro-growth tax cuts, or whether it's deregulating the economy, producing more energy, all the things Trumps want to do, they increase growth and they're going to reduce our debt, not raise it. By the way, if you get 3.5% growth, look at that, the debt goes way down. Growth is everything, okay? The next chart. I have to show you this, folks. It's not on the economy, but if I may, Lisa, this is a very quick story. But I went to see Donald Trump almost exactly 2 years ago. It was July of 2022, and Trump was down. Remember, people forget, in July of 2022, he had 15 indictments against him. Everybody was talking about, you know, all these other candidates, Ron DeSantis and so on, that were going to run for president, and Trump looked like he was dead in the water. He really did. And when I went to see him in Bedminster, he and I just spent about an hour together across the table. It was kind of sad. He was, you know, he was down. And I thought at that point, it's very, very, very unlikely that he could make this comeback. By the way, this is one of the greatest comebacks in the history of politics, that Trump made this incredible comeback. Anyway, we're talking, and I showed him all these charts comparing what, can you put that chart back up again? If you look at the, can you get that back up on the screen? This is, I'll wait for a minute till, did it go down or? Okay, here it is. So I showed him all these charts about how much better the economy had performed under Trump than under Biden, under Trump's first term versus Biden. And then the last chart I showed him was this chart about what had happened with illegal immigration, that in his first term there was almost no illegal immigration. Then Biden comes in and the illegal immigration goes through the roof. Well, of all the 25 charts I showed him, this is the one he completely honed in on. Oh my God, this is so great. I got to show this to Susie. I got to show this to, Miller, all the people running the campaign, and da-da-da. He was so excited about this. And does anybody know the significance of this chart? Butler, this is the chart that he had on, it's not the exact chart. His policy guys made a new version of this. They put this up on the chart. Trump put it on the screen. He turned his head. The bullet went by his head. Ladies and gentlemen, I saved Donald Trump's life, okay? All right, I'm only kidding, but okay, so next chart. I'm almost done, Lisa, I promise. Go to the next one, please. A little slow. Next one. Do you have the next one? Is that it? Okay. If that is it, let me just then that's probably a good thing to conclude. No, let me say this. I am super bullish right now. Trump is proving to be the most effective president, I would say even more so than Reagan. And Reagan is my hero. I mean, Reagan belongs on Mount Rushmore for what he did for our country. It's interesting, when Laffer and I go talk to Trump, and we see him about every 6 months, he loves to chat, and he loves to chat with Arthur, and he spends the whole half of those meetings asking Arthur about Ronald Reagan. And the reason he does that is because he's jealous of Reagan, and he wants to go down in history as an even greater president than Ronald Reagan. And by the way, that's a pretty good role model to have, wouldn't you say, to have Ronald Reagan as president? If Trump keeps on this stage, on this path that he has set forward, with the most incredible, his executive orders every single day, I cannot keep up with the amazing things that he is doing. And I don't like his tariffs, but I think we're going to see an economic boom. And folks, we may have to put 2 new heads on Mount Rushmore, Ronald Reagan and Donald J. Trump. Okay, thank you very much.
Please welcome back Patricia Rucker.
Thank you, Steve. We legislators know about envy and wanting to compete and wanting to be on top. So that was an excellent reminder of why a sound economic policy rooted in principle still matters. Please enjoy your lunch. We will resume shortly with more on the role of finance and the shaping of local economies to support the work we do in the states.
Please welcome ALEC Chief Executive Officer Lisa B. Nelson.
Well, I hope you guys are enjoying your lunch. I hope also you'll be able to keep quiet while we get through the rest of the program. We have a lot still to get done. But before we get started, I want to thank Steve Moore. Steve, you are a great partner. The Committee to Unleash Prosperity and ALEC are great partners and get really big things done, so thank you. You got that one big, beautiful bill done. So it was a huge win, but a win that may not grab the headlines that it deserves because it wasn't about creating a brand new policy. It was about protecting what was already working, preserving the tax cuts that helped spark some of the strongest economic growth we've seen in a generation. Without this victory, we would have faced the single largest tax hike in American history, and that is not an exaggeration. That was what was coming. We can't assume that people understand what happened, so it's up to us to tell that story. Remember what those tax cuts delivered. Jobs came back, energy prices dropped, wages rose, and businesses had the freedom to expand. The other side will only point to cuts and ignore the recovery, but we know better. We will point to real reforms led by the states that unleash that prosperity from the bottom up. While the Tax Cut Victory Alliance included many valued allies, few were as essential to its success as the financial industry. I was fortunate enough to have a front row seat to the inner workings of that world during my time at Visa. But for most people, the mechanics of finance remain something of a mystery. We swipe a card, sign a receipt, and move on, rarely thinking about the complex systems and the partnerships that make that all possible. Whether we're talking about funding infrastructure, launching a small business, or just making everyday transactions possible, banks are the foundation beneath that policy. At ALEC, we focus on trusted policy solutions, ideas that work, but none of those ideas can move forward without partners. Financial institutions are those partners. From community lenders to national firms, they provide the capital and the confidence that lets policy become reality. They don't just hold your money, they help move it to where it matters most. And in doing so, they play a powerful role in every state economy, every legislative budget, and on every main street. This afternoon, you'll hear from leaders representing both national perspectives. Catherine Hogan, the CEO of the card division at JP Morgan Chase, brings insight into financial access at scale. And Assistant Minority Leader in the Illinois House, John Cabela, who understands the day-to-day needs of families and small businesses. Together, they will offer us a well-rounded view of how the financial sector supports growth, stability, and freedom in our states. Please welcome them to the stage. Okay, let's get started. I understand there was a workshop earlier this morning where Steve, maybe you held forth with Steve Rauschenberger and Corey and the electronic payment folks. I hope that went well. It sounded like it was a ruckus crowd.
It was great.
It was great. Well, we're
great.
glad to hear it, and we're glad for your interest in that. Tell me a little bit, Catherine, about your role at Chase and the card division and how you got to that place.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And I'm just delighted to be here in this room full of people who are really interested in supporting businesses in growing our incredible economy. And so I felt like I was at a rock concert in the electronic payments session because I wanted to like cheer and wave my arms, but I didn't. But the role that I'm playing now, I report to, actually, you gave me a promotion, which thank you for that, but I actually report to our CEO of credit cards and connected commerce at Chase. And the role that I'm playing now is really one where we are focused on getting government overreach out of our business so we can focus on doing what we love to do. And it was ironic, actually. This morning I woke up and looked at my phone, and the picture that was on my phone was a picture that I had snapped at a conference in 2022, and it said, "Deliver products and services that our customers love." And then it had like one of the little hand hearts. And that is really what we do each and every day. We come in, we want to build products and services that our customers love, and we want to make sure that policies, regulations, proposals aren't propagating that keep us from that business. And so that's really what my role is. Prior to that, which we've been doing for about a year and a half, and I work really closely with our GR teams who brought us into ALEC, and thank you to Margaret and others, just delighted to be here. Before that, I ran our branded credit card business for 6 years. And before that, I have worked in finance for about 30 years in the credit card industry, where we're really focused on the efficient allocation of capital to drive business outcomes.
Yeah, it's so important. And for those people, I am sure that every single person in this room has a credit card in their wallet, right? Every single person? Yes, you do. I know I keep about 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think on average it's 4.8.
All Chase, I will say, interestingly, all Chase and all Visa. So I'm brand specific.
Thank you for your business.
Where does that fit within the JP Morgan universe, the card division?
Yeah, so we sit in the consumer bank in Chase, and our division is, we are the biggest credit card company in the world. We are so proud of our products and services. Hopefully we have a lot of folks here that use those products and services. But yes, we sit within the consumer division, and again, our whole mission is trying to build products that people are excited about using.
That's wonderful. All right, Representative Cabello, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved in being in the legislature? We always like to showcase somebody from the State House or the State Senate in our conversations. We'd love to hear how you got started.
Purely selfish reasons. I saw our taxes going up and up and up and up, and instead of complaining about it on the sidelines, I decided to try to jump in the game to try to change it. In the state of Illinois, and I actually call it Illinois because we've got so many problems. We have to find people that understand that you can't continue to tax people. I mean, is there any chiropractors in the room? Because I think it's a great place to open up a business because we're breaking the backs of the taxpayers in the state of Illinois. I mean, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. Actually, Mr. Moore, maybe we can have you come save Illinois after saving the president, which we would appreciate it.
He's from Illinois.
Yes,
Don't even
please.
entice him. He goes there every chance he gets.
So those are the reasons why I decided to run for the State House. And then once I got in, I realized that we are against some insurmountable odds. But we can't stop. We can't give up. We have to continue to fight because the residents and the taxpayers deserve that. They deserve to have a different voice. They deserve to make sure that they have people in there fighting for them every single day. It makes me so passionate because you talk to the other legislators on the other side of the aisle, and they don't seem to understand that you can't continue just to take money from your constituents. That they can't afford it any longer. That they have to make big decisions on whether they buy their medication or they pay their rent.
Right.
And we need help in Illinois, and I think we've got a good team right now. I think we're going to do some good things here in the very near future, but it's going to take all of us.
Well, thank you for your service, and we're going to talk a little bit about some electronic payment policy in Illinois in a minute. Catherine, tell me a little bit about the value that, in Chase's words, that the electronic payment system kind of brings to the consumer. Because I think a lot of people kind of think just it's like electricity. I turn on the lights and it works, and I get a bill at the end of the month. But they take it for granted somehow, and they don't really understand what's behind this engine that keeps the entire globe really working on that payment system.
Yeah, no, 100%. I thought that's why the EPC session earlier was great. I'm gonna definitely ask to borrow those slides, because the payment system, which we all enjoy today, was built on literally decades and decades, going back to 1950, of investment in technology, in fraud solutions, in products, you know, as an issuer. And in a minute, we're going to get to a page where I sort of describe the different participants in the system. But, you know, private enterprise came together to solve problems that really merchants had about how to support their customers and buying the things that their customers wanted to buy before there was easy access to private credit. And so, you know, the system was sort of built around that. And to your point, now I don't think people even think about it when they pull that credit card out, pull their iPhone out to pay for something with Apple Pay. You know, at the Starbucks here in the JW Marriott, I think they had a big sign out, they don't accept cash anymore. And I think that's because a lot of businesses are looking at the cost of accepting cash and making a decision that it's just not right for their business. Now, a lot of businesses, it is, and businesses should have the freedom to make those choices, but the government shouldn't decide to regulate one form of payment just because they can. But as a consumer, you know, we benefit from you know, sort of fast, safe, secure payments, the convenience of just having to have that card in your wallet or your phone in your pocket or your Apple Watch, and you don't have to worry about how much money am I going to need, you know, to pay the bill at the restaurant. Businesses are able to form like literally overnight with the acceptance of electronic payments. They get immediate cash flow, which is the lifeblood of small businesses. They get, we have a lot of data where, you know, basket sizes are frequently up to 2 times as much as they are if your customers are paying with cash. You know, there's a lot of chatter about the cost of payments, credit and debit, electronic payments, which average from 2 to 3% for most businesses. We have a lot of data that says the cost of accepting cash, depending on the type of business that you have, is frequently anywhere from 7 to 15%. And so there's benefits really across the system. When you look at the economic growth that the United States has experienced over the last 40 years, a lot of that is fueled by a highly functioning, super sophisticated payment system that most Americans benefit from and participate in.
You know, it's music to my ears, because ALEC is founded on limited government and free markets. And when you think about those charts that Steve was showing about the industries where the prices have gone up as you've injected money in, and then the industries where the prices have gone down as you build an entrepreneurial response to a need, by a consumer need, you know, it seems to me that this business has been the most free market business that I can think of in terms of just making it seamless and making it so easy for customers. And I remember when I was at Visa for the 10 years that I was there, that government overreach of trying to tell us how it's like the government telling us when to open and close a state, right? We don't like that. We don't want government to tell us how to run a business and how to set our prices. And that's what I had seen, you know, when I was there, and that's what we're seeing, I guess, as a proliferation all across the country. In Illinois, there's a particular bill that has been, I think it was signed into law, and we're looking at that thinking we've got to make that stop. We've got to stop that dead in its tracks. Don't let California get a hold of that one. But can you tell us a little bit about that bill and the challenges and maybe some of the politics behind it as you guys navigated that?
Sure. If you don't mind, I'll start with the politics behind it, because if I remember correctly, and maybe Mr. Rauschenberger can remind me if I'm wrong, this bill actually didn't even go through a committee. This bill didn't get a hearing. This bill didn't go through the normal process of what every other normal bill does. It was put into a BIMP bill, Budget Implementation Bill, and there it was. You either voted yes or no. And if you know anything about the state of Illinois, the last waning hours of session, 2 hours usually before, they want it maybe 4 hours now sometimes, they'll drop the bills, the budget bills, all of the bills that go along with it. You have no way of knowing what's in the bill. It's the old Nancy Pelosi saying, you need to pass the bill to see what's in the bill. And it's a piss poor way to run government. It really is. I mean, I hate to be so direct, but I mean, there was no vetting of this in any way, shape, or form. I believe we're the only state right now that has it.
Yes.
But if you look at where Illinois is on top, none of the folks in this audience that's a legislator will ever follow where we are on top. Because if we're on top, it's bad. It's bad.
You rank number 1 in the worst policy.
We have a governor who's walking to be president, and he just doesn't understand the fact that he needs to focus on the problems that we have. He's auditioning to be as far left as he possibly can, so he's implementing these new laws and forcing them through in ways that we've never seen before. So it does a lot of bad things, and I think we've talked about a lot of that already. The other thing is that there was a bill, I believe somebody filed a lawsuit. Several of the organizations, banking organizations got together, filed a lawsuit, and the bill was actually stopped. The legislature passed a bill. It was supposed to actually be implemented July 1st of 2025. That bill passed, and it is now not going to be implemented until July 1st of 2026. 9 Republicans, including myself, voted against the extension. And the reason why we voted against the extension was we didn't want to give credibility to the actual bill that was passed in the first place, which never saw the light of day until it came through the budget process. So it's the way that Illinois operates, and the only reason, in my opinion, why Illinois wanted this is because it will bring in more sales tax. It will bring in more sales tax, and even our Speaker of the House says that he has a bunch of tax and spend Democrats, and they need to find revenue to make sure that they have the money to pass whatever they need and to spend as much as they want.
You know, your example and the way that process worked in the Illinois chambers is reminiscent of the Dodd-Frank bill, because very similarly, and I know a few people here that I worked with on that, it was implemented and put on conference. So it passed in the Senate, added in conference, and then the Democrats just passed that bill out. So you actually regulated an industry that had never before, the credit card industry had never before been regulated. It's been left alone to innovate and to create this amazing connection. You know, I'd love for you to go into, Catherine, how that system works. It's such a complicated. We have our Visa. Visa had the data center out in Reston, Virginia, and I remember it was the size of, I think, 8 Walmarts, and only about 28 people actually worked in the building because it was all electronics. And once you see this, you kind of take a step back and think, oh my gosh, this is every transaction in the world kind of crisscrossing through this system. But it is a very complicated system.
Yeah, and I've got a page I think that we can put up, and I can talk through it at a high level. The EPC session earlier today, apologies for those of you that were in that, had a more sophisticated version of it. But before we leave, Phil, remind me, how many states this year were Illinois-like, or Illinois? 24 plus DC. So, you know, sort of if we have an ask for you, it's look out for these things. There are Durban, I don't know, apostles out talking to people about these bills. They're telling people that they're going to benefit small businesses in their states, and it's just not true. They're not implementable. They're chaotic. They won't really save small businesses money. And so just be on the alert if you're hearing about these things. look into it, ask questions, because when we have an opportunity to go in and talk to folks, they will say this doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't, but like it does get sometimes billed as a way to help small businesses in your state, and it's not accurate. Okay, so I can't see this.
It's right down in front of you, right
slide.
there. If you can see it, right there.
All right. I'll do it from the top of my head. So basically what we tried to do here, because this is a complicated system, it does have a lot of players. I think it gets sometimes boiled down in talking points as, Visa and MasterCard have this duopoly. It's not true. The payments system is extraordinarily complicated. There are thousands of participants. Issuing banks, we compete against each other each and every day for customers and clients. Earlier today, I think they were asking, how many solicitations you get from credit cards. That's evidence that we're competing. The networks compete very fiercely. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover on their own business, very competitive business. There are thousands of merchant processors or acquirers who are the people that sit between the merchant and the network that compete very significantly for their clients and customers. And the transaction sort of kind of flows across the 4 different parties. And if you think about, like, when you go in, Lisa, if you came in this morning to buy your coffee at Starbucks and you had to use your credit card because they don't take cash, you put the credit card, tap it on the machine, in literally milliseconds, that information will flow through to the processor. The processor will say, we know Lisa's there, she's got the card in her hand, she just tried to buy a cup of coffee. The processor sends the information to Visa, Visa sends the information to us. We say, yes, it makes sense. We know that Lisa bought her plane ticket to Indianapolis on her credit card, so it makes sense she's in Indianapolis. She drinks a lot of coffee. It makes sense she's buying a coffee. We know she's fine. If we think it's not you, we'll shoot you a text and say, Lisa, are you trying to buy coffee? You can say yes, and then we'll let the transaction go through. But it's absolutely seamless for really all of the parties involved, on the backs of decades of billions and billions and probably trillions of dollars of investment, in making that system work perfectly seamlessly, so seamlessly that I think now a lot of us take it for granted. But that's kind of how the 4-party system works, and the people that participate in it.
You're talking also about the customer's bank, but also the merchant's bank.
Yes.
So that 4th party is the merchant's bank, and it's saying, now I've got my funds. Thank you very much.
I have the money already.
So it's a loop system that is just incredible. And the other thing that I always found, Steve was talking about the inflation and cost of living and all of that. You mentioned the small businesses and how this was going to help. Some of this policy in the state level is going to help small businesses. They will always say, well, if we could just regulate this, then your prices will go down. And I'm not sure that that's the case, because I remember when the Dodd-Frank bill went through at the federal level, and prices didn't go down. They just kept a better margin for a different set of players, right? Not for the innovators, but for the people who are taking it kind of as a middleman. Is that the way it kind of works, or is that how it's going to be seen?
I can tell you that speaking to a lot of business owners and constituents in the district a lot, they tell us, we want government to stay the hell out of our lives. And this bill that Illinois passed is more intrusive. It does more things. It does more regulation, and it's not going to help anybody. If there's extra fees, a lot of times those fees are going to put back down onto the consumer. And the consumer is going to spend less because they continue to have less and less, because the state of Illinois continues to tax more and more. The thing that I think too many people in the legislature didn't understand is that the bigger companies also have to cut back services. So the mom and pop shop that is benefiting, they believe, from this bill, they may not get some of the benefits from the larger corporations taking the fraud out of the system. They may not benefit or have the opportunity of receiving the funds that people get if there is the fraud that's going on. So we've got the unintended consequences of the bill haven't been realized just yet in the state of Illinois, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah, Catherine, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the reality is, you know, whether it's this bill, well, so the interesting thing about the bill in Illinois, when the outcome of the litigation, preliminary outcome of the litigation, is that national banks are not impacted because of federal preemption. So at this point, really the only banks that would be impacted by the Illinois law are small state chartered banks. And so it's not even helping, it's hurting small banks, it's not helping Illinois small businesses, it's not helping Illinois consumers. But if you pull back and you say, okay, the law goes through, the law impacts, you know, the players in the system, you know, and we talk about this publicly all the time. It's JP Morgan Chase, like, we are not capital constrained. We invest every last dollar that we can invest in growing our business. And if you pull money out of the system, if you put a price cap on our credit card programs, we will change our credit card programs. We will reduce rewards. We will be able to we won't be able to offer credit to as many people as we offer credit to today, because we have to cover the cost of charge-offs. And it will just be a automatic and purely rational response to the economics of the product changing. So it's not helping anybody, A, and then it ultimately will hurt people if these price controls go into place, because just like to your point, Lisa, on the debit interchange, when debit interchange was regulated, debit rewards went away, free checking went away. The system has to respond to changes in the environment, and we will. And so, you know, Allison and I, the real CEO of the card business, we talk about this, and we're so passionate about this because we know exactly what's going to happen. And so even though, like Illinois, although it's given me an opportunity to meet you, which has been a pleasure, Illinois doesn't on paper impact JP Morgan Chase at all, but it impacts the system, it impacts small banks, and it's not good for anybody. And so we are investing and taking our time and energy to say it's just a bad idea.
Yeah, you talk about the rewards and the points, and you know, I do love my rewards.
Everyone
and my
loves
points.
their rewards. Our customers love our products.
But you know what? I'll tell you what I love the most is my end of year statement that categorizes all my spending and what I did and kind of how much travel was there, and you know, did I buy it on restaurant? Did I spend my money on restaurants or on being athletic and, you know, getting out there and exercising or whatever? But I love that end of year statement that you guys do. So tell me, just in the last minute that we've got, what do we see in the future? Are we going to keep seeing whack-a-mole in the states to try to kind of get at this in Illinois bills, and what can we do to help you?
Yeah, I think we absolutely are in a game of whack-a-mole. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think this has been a battle for the ages. There's litigation that's active, that's been out there for decades, because the reality is, I think, that merchants, and you know, understand why they take this position, but merchants think that they're going to get all of the benefits that they get from the system today at a lower price, and that these bills are a way for them to exert more pricing leverage on the system, whether that's the networks, the processors, or the issuers. And so they're going to keep fighting, and so we are going to need to keep fighting as well.
And at the state level, is Illinois an early warning system?
It is. And again, if you see Illinois passing something, I would do the exact opposite. I hate to say that.
That's a perfect message.
I hate to say that. I love our state, but the politics and the bills that we pass are just horrible.
Well, on that note, we will not do what Illinois does. If you see any of this conversation or discussions taking place in your chambers, in your conferences, just beware. Beware of what's coming for you, and beware of government intervention. So thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you so much, Brett Pavella.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry.
Please welcome ALEC Board Member, Ohio State Senator, President Rob McCauley.
Thank you, Lisa, for an informative panel on an emerging issue in our economy. These are the reasons that we come to ALEC. So I come to you from Ohio, the other side of Indiana, to bring you an alternative perspective to what we're hearing about the other neighbor in Illinois, Ohio, where the ALEC principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism are on full display, where ed choice is thriving in the state, where deregulation is something that we're focusing on all the time, and where just recently we enacted a flat tax, 2.75%, which will be the lowest in the Midwest. But our work in Ohio is not done. Our work is just beginning. Just like any other state in this room, when you come to these conferences, there's the healthy competition that happens. There's the realization that our work has been cut out for us by the leaders across the country who are trying to think of that next bold and innovative step. And to take those next steps, we need bold and innovative leaders. We need bold and innovative voices in each of our states and across our country. And our next speaker that we're all going to get a chance to hear from today is one of those bold and innovative leaders. Vivek Ramaswamy has fought cancel culture here in this country and even wrote a book called Woke Inc., Fighting Cancel Culture in this country. He's been a voice for the MAGA movement and for President Trump in this country through his re-election campaign in 2024 and his great political comeback. And indeed, he's a voice for a new generation of leaders across this country. Allow me to introduce my friend, a friend of President Trump, and most importantly for today, a friend of ALEC, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Good to see you, and I want to congratulate my friend, President of our Senate, Rob McCauley, and the entire Ohio delegation for arriving at that flat tax. I'm very proud of what you were able to accomplish this last cycle, and I got to say I was backstage listening to what, leaving this meeting, I will now going forward refer to as the Illinois Doctrine. And what we're aiming to set in Ohio, we're getting there, and in a course of a few years we will be there, is the alternative mirror image of that, what I will call the Ohio Doctrine. What we are able to set as a standard for the future of the United States of America. And I want to applaud the delegations of states from Florida to Tennessee to Texas to Utah to so many others of you who have set great examples and brought great ideas for us of what we're going to turn into reality in our own home state. But I say that in the spirit of where we are in our national history. It's a special moment for the future of the United States of America, where in the next 2 years, perhaps sooner, the center of gravity of saving this country is actually going to move from Washington, D.C. back to the states and to the people where it belongs. It's a founding moment. It's a founding moment in the United States of America. Look at the shutdown of the Department of Education, which is now well underway, and you can give President Trump a round of applause for that one. That is step one, but that is the first step of still leading our country forward. The next step falls on the shoulders of the people in this room to actually revive the educational standards themselves. You see, shutting down the Department of Education is a great first step, but the ultimate finishing of that job falls on the shoulders of the states and the leaders like many of you who are here today. And that's where I want to kick off as we think about refocusing and resetting where we are as a conservative movement today. It's a message that's designed to not necessarily tell you deliver you candy, let me just say, but maybe deliver you some vegetables, deliver all of us some vegetables that I think we need to swallow if we're going to actually play our role in leading our country back to greatness. We defeated the radical woke left. We won in November of 2024, and that is a new reality that we ought to start getting used to, and I mean that in a more challenging sense. It's easy to now lambast the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden administration, or whatever that was for 4 years. I did plenty of it, perhaps so did many of you. But that era is now behind us. And if we're talking about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 6 months, that means we lost the plot. Frankly, I want our memory of Joe Biden in September of this year to be about the same as Joe Biden's memory of anything while he was in office. Because that's the past. We are now ready to chase our future. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we plan to do in Ohio, but then I want to expand that to a broader discussion of where we have to head as a conservative movement nationally. In our state of Ohio, my goal, our goal as leaders of our state, is to turn Ohio back into the state that we were for most of our national history, the state of excellence in the United States of America. We're a great state, one of the best in our region. Compared to our friends in Illinois and Minnesota, where I visited recently, I can confirm we are one of the best in the Midwest. But I hope, and I mean this with due humility to this group, I hope that we're able to lead Ohio not just to be the top state in the Midwest, but for our part, the top state in the country, to raise a young family, to grow a new business, to celebrate and embrace capitalism with pride, the greatest system known to the history of man to lift people up from poverty. To be the state where we educate and cultivate our young people to see themselves not as victims, but as victors in a competitive global economy. And for Ohio to take back our turn to be a state that people flock to and flock back to, not just to our friends in Texas or Florida. And there are many who question whether Ohio could possibly be that state. How could Ohio be that state, they ask. In fact, our friends in California remind me there's an app on TikTok where there's a little meme. If something's old or out of touch or out of fashion for the last few years, they even say, only in Ohio. And that irritates me because it wasn't long ago that people weren't making fun of Ohio. They were aspiring to be Ohio. We led the first industrial revolution. In 1950, 6 of the top 15 wealthiest cities in America were in our own home state of Ohio. Toledo led the world in glass production, Akron in rubber production, Youngstown and Cleveland in steel production. My hometown of Cincinnati was known around the world as the Queen City, the consumer products capital of the West. And there's something special that happens. This is not just a lesson for Ohio, this is a lesson for the nation. There's something special that happens when a kid is growing up in that state, in that nation, the heart of the greatest nation known to the history of mankind, is that they believe they're able to achieve the things they were taught to believe were impossible. It's not an accident that that was the same Ohio that Neil Armstrong grew up in, born, raised, living in Ohio as he became the first man in human history to walk on the moon. It's not a coincidence that was the Ohio that raised John Glenn, born, raised, living in Ohio when he became the first American to go into orbit around the Earth. The same Ohio that the Wright brothers grew up in, born and raised in Dayton, eventually going on to take flight at a moment they were taught to believe that was impossible. And my goal is to revive that spirit in our state, but to do it in our state for all 50 states in our union, to say we're the state of excellence, we were the place that led the world, and we ought to be the place that does it again. If it was Silicon Valley that led the way in the American economy for the last 10 years, we want it to be the Ohio River Valley for the next 10 years, not through the Rust Belt, but through the Platinum Belt, not just chasing the sectors of the past, but the sectors of the future as well. From semiconductor production to nuclear energy to our defense industrial base, and dare I say, the state and the region where we actually embrace AI, not to take old jobs, but to make new jobs through workforce training and education. It's a modern-day Northwest ordinance for our region. That's the way I see it. It's going to require some changes. We're going to become a zero-income tax state, starting from that base of a flat tax, because you deserve to keep what you earn. It's your money, not the government's. I was with Art Laffer backstage, and he reminded me it wasn't long ago that most states did not have an income tax. It's a recent invention, one of our poorer inventions of mankind. We're going to get rid of it. One of the first steps to get there, and we'd love to open source our policies, is to take the steps of actually stopping the taxation of capital gains as part of the first step to actually get there, so that we could be a magnet, like iron to a magnet, for capital owners across the country. But perhaps the most important thing we're going to work on in the state of Ohio over the long run, and I think perhaps the most important calling for our nation over the next 20 years, is to lead our country out of the educational achievement crisis that we're in. I want to talk about this for a minute. I think there's two great threats to the future of American exceptionalism. And I believe it's going to fall on the shoulders of its states to address both of these deficits. Number one is the failure in educational achievement. Think about where the hard facts are today. 75% of eighth graders across the country today are not proficient in math. The average student in the United States is a full 4 academic years behind their counterpart in China, 5 full years behind their peers in Singapore. That's unacceptable, especially as we enter an era of AI, automation, enter the era of the future. That doesn't work for the future of the United States of America. And it's not going to be the federal government that fixes it. At most, we're going to see a federal government that does its part by getting out of the business of federal mandates in education through the shutdown of the DOE. But fixing that problem is going to now fall on the shoulders of those of us in this room. And what we hope to do for the country is to set a model for how we not only overcome the woke indoctrination and victimhood psychology, which we must continue to do. I believe the peak of that's behind us, but that job isn't finished until we've actually eradicated a lot of the poison. But to go further than that, to actually ask, how do we then go further and actually elevate our performance in math, reading, writing, physical education, financial literacy, civic education, and you think about even the sectors of the future, even embracing AI competence and literacy beginning in high school. That's the standard we want to set in the state of Ohio. Now, some of this includes combating a chronic absenteeism epidemic that began with the COVID-19 school closures. Our state was not immune from this, and never again are we going to collectively bend the knee to fake Anthony Fauci knockoffs in each of our states that allowed our public schools to be closed while our private schools remained open. But that's just basic. That's just table stakes stuff. When we think about really elevating our public schools to be able to compete with the best of the alternatives, yes, we need school choice to the furthest level that states like Arizona and Iowa have gone. I'm proud of you all for setting a standard that we're going to get to in Ohio as well. But we also have to make sure that our public schools are equipped to compete with the best of those alternatives. And that means we are going to have to adopt new models that actually pay the best teachers according to the outcomes that they actually deliver. See, I'm an entrepreneur, not a politician, I'm a businessman. And it would be unthinkable to run a business in a way that paid everybody according to not their performance, but whether or not they were employed. To say whether or not you get promoted, whether or not you get a bonus, whether or not you get hired or fired, is completely agnostic to your performance in a business. That would be unthinkable. In fact, your business would probably fail if you ran it that way. And yet that is exactly how effectively all 50 states run our public school systems today. And what we aim to do in the state of Ohio, and we would love nothing more than for every other state to replicate and even innovate on what we develop, is merit-based compensation for teachers. Not just teaching to the test. Thank you. We'll take that. Not just teaching to the test, but holistic assessments of performance management. Taking a look at actually peer assessments in the school, parental assessments. Parents often know whether their kids are thriving in the classroom or not. And yes, some measure of student outcomes as well. There's a school in Ohio that's actually done it, a public school in Clyde, Ohio. 10 years ago, night and day differences. When you look at outcomes for graduation rates, retention rates, job placement rates, it's common sense. And yet this is the kind of failure that actually holds our public schools back. To the extent that teachers' unions stand in our way, we have to have the courage to do what's right and ask ourselves, if you're a teacher unionizing against who exactly? It's the very students you're supposed to represent. And so what I've said in Ohio is I'm not running on a campaign to dismantle teachers' unions, but I'm not running on a campaign not to dismantle teachers' unions either. We will do whatever is required to achieve the goal of bringing merit to our public education system. That includes replacing a lot of the victimhood psychology with actual civics lessons, U.S. history lessons, that teach our students to be proud of our state and our country rather than to be ashamed of it. And some of that comes with tough love. Every high school senior who graduates from an Ohio high school, I hope this is true across all 50 states very soon, will have to pass the same civics test that every legal immigrant has to pass before that immigrant becomes a voting citizen. It's not too much to ask of our own high school seniors. You got to know something about your country, to be proud of your country, to pledge allegiance to that country. And that's what I want to see in the country in the moment we're in right now. As conservatives, we're done with the era of just bashing I would say, beneath par opposition party. That's been too easy. We won. We control all three chambers, all three branches of the government at the federal level. And in our state, the same goes for our state at the state level, too. At this point, if we screw it up, we've got nobody left to blame but ourselves. And we believe in accountability. We will practice what we preach. We want to see that revival of ambition in our country. Economic ambition, educational ambition, academic ambition, scientific ambition. Yes, even moral and spiritual ambition. A country that embraces that spirit of victory over victimhood. We don't whine, we win. That's who we are. That's what we want to see out of the conservative movement. Not imitating the victimhood culture of the left, but breaking free of it to revive that quaint idea of the American dream. That idea that if you work hard, you play by the rules, you do get to have a good life. You do get to dream for an even better life for your kids. I know that American dream exists because I have lived it. Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, the kid of immigrants who came to this country over 40 years ago with almost nothing. And in a single generation, having gone on to found successful companies, become the youngest person in U.S. history to run for president as a Republican. Now, hopefully, God willing, in a position to lead that very state where I was born and raised. The extraordinary thing about that story is that it is really not that extraordinary in the United States of America. It ought not be extraordinary in states like Ohio. And I want to see us embrace that spirit of ambition that sent Neil Armstrong to the moon, that sent John Glenn into orbit, that sent the Wright brothers to fly those blue skies at a moment they were taught to believe that was impossible, to cultivate a generation of young people who aren't dependent on their government, but independent from it, to challenge those of us in this room, not just to quibble over the small accounting fights of how we manage Medicaid spending one direction or another, but to ask the big question of how do we cultivate an entire generation that is so financially successful, so well educated, so equipped, starting at a young age with the power of financial literacy and the knowledge of compounding, that they're independent from not just Medicaid, but Medicare, Social Security, the federal entitlement state and welfare state, that will likely have run out of money by the time those kids who are born next year age into those programs anyway. Let's be ambitious about declaring a modern Declaration of Independence ahead of our 250th anniversary next year. That's the charge that we have ahead of us as a conservative movement. Not to be victims in our own right, not to complain about the other side because we won. Now is our moment to actually define who we are and what we actually stand for. What do we actually believe? What does it mean to be an American? That we believe in the principles of meritocracy that made this country great. That we believe in hard work. That we believe in work requirements attached to government aid if you're ever actually going to get it at all, as a path to independence from the government rather than greater dependence on it. And I think the two things we're going to deliver at the state level is, number one, the foundation of a world-class education that I believe is the birthright of every American in this country, and the path to financial independence that allows us to sunset that original sin that began with FDR and was exacerbated by Lyndon B. Johnson and the Great Society, to actually sunset that entitlement state to create a new dawn in our country, a new American dream, where every child knows they are equipped both financially and educationally to be able to stand on their own 2 feet with pride to achieve the maximum of their own God-given potential, not by suckling at the teat of their federal government, but empowered by the states that allow them to thrive and live that American dream that I have lived, that so many of you in this room have lived, and that we will bequeath to that next generation of my kids and to yours. And we in Ohio will do our part to set that national example so that, 10 years from now, when we're sending manned rockets to Mars, when we're powering our electric grid with the energy of the future, when we're curing previously incurable diseases with cures discovered in our own home state of Ohio, you know what our young people are going to say then? Only in Ohio, and a model for the rest of the country. Thank you, guys. God bless you and your families, and we'll be back. Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome ALEC Vice Chairman, Florida Representative Demi Basada.
Vivek. Inspiring words as always. There's no doubt that great things are going to come to Ohio soon. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to give you a sneak peek at what's in store for ALEC's 2026 annual meeting, which will be in the free state of Florida. That's right. So those of you who haven't been to Florida, it is incredible, especially in the month of July. And if you were with us last time, oh.
Back up the bus just a little bit. May I?
If you must.
Thank you. I don't want you to get ahead. And believe me, I love Florida, particularly love Orlando. Great place to bring your grandkids for Kids Congress and all that we'll have going on there. But before we get there, we've got SNPs. And SNPs won't be in Florida. It'll be in Fort Worth, Texas. And first week of December, ahead of Florida. Not that we ever compete, but just saying we are going to be before them. First week of December, SNPs will be in Fort Worth, Texas. If you haven't been to Fort Worth, let me tell you, it is the best conference city in America for a bunch of reasons. Western heritage, it's where the West begins. Some people say Dallas is where the East runs out, but I won't say that. But it's where the West begins. The historic stockyards, you can come there and see cowboys and cowgirls and rodeos and watch longhorns being worked down the streets while you're there.
We have a lazy river and water slides and a golf course and a spa.
Yeah, we have creeks too and everything, but you know, it's seriously, it's a great town. It is I know we're not supposed to be partisan here, but I'll just say that it's one of those cities that actually wants us to be there and visit. And so anyway, it's coming up. We want you to remember Fort Worth. By the way, we're going to do some little fun things, like we'll have a custom boot maker there, one that's reasonable in price, and you can have your state seal and your office and your name put on your boot, and just a lot of fun things. But it's where the West begins. We're going to make Orlando wish they were Fort Worth.
I don't know about that. We have glorious beaches. We have a thriving economy. We have no state income tax.
And they have you. And they have you. But if you want to be a cowboy, if you want to be a cowgirl, if you want to have fun, come to SNPs. It'll be a great adventure. And then after that, we'll have a wonderful time in Orlando.
Thank you. Yes. Fort Worth has a lot to offer. Florida has a lot to offer. We're excited to have you at our December meeting and next year back in Florida. And now we have more business to get to. So I think they're going to post the meetings this afternoon up here. You can find them in your app and go forth and conquer.